is no question, there are just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. College costs a lot of money. At some point, 92.8 million Americans have had to take out student loans, and there's currently $1.75 trillion in outstanding student debt. You heard right, $1.75 trillion. Now, to combat this issue and fulfill a campaign promise, President Biden just recently shared his plan to forgive hundreds of billions in federal student debt, and it ignited a very heated debate.
Now to Washington and President Biden's historic decision on student loans. The measure could affect up to 43 million Americans.
My campaign for president, I made a commitment that would provide student debt relief. And I'm honoring that commitment today.
The president's plan will forgive $10,000 worth of student debt. People who got Pell Grants could see their debt cut by $20,000.
I've racked up a lot of debt, and it would be a huge financial blessing to get rid of at least even a little bit of that.
Right now, student loan debt is holding back people who are trying to buy homes. It's holding back people who are trying to start small businesses.
His announcement on federal student loan forgiveness drew cheers from one quarter and criticism from another.
It's very unfair to people that took out loans, worked hard, and paid off their loans.
If I knew that I could have taken out like $20,000 student loans and someone else would have paid for them, I would have done it like 10 years ago.
I think it's a bad idea. An awful lot of Americans choose not to go to college.
It is hurting people who paid off their own debts.
Even some Democrats, including Congressman Chris Pappas, said the plan doesn't do enough to address, quote, the underlying issue of the affordability of higher education.
What is your assessment of the president's decision on student loan debt relief?
I think it was the wrong solution at the wrong time, because I agree it's like throwing gasoline on a fire. Inflation is out of control.
President, is this unfair to people who paid their student loans or chose not to take out loans?
Is it fair to people who, in fact, do not own multi-billion-dollar businesses that see why these guys get them all tax breaks? Is that fair? What do you think?
We're going to talk about this and more today with guests from all walks of life who have a lot to say about this, and it is a hot topic that has Americans up in arms. Let's start with you, James. You graduated from Pepperdine University, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Currently, you have $74,000 in student debt. And do you have a job?
I currently work as a program director for Burbank High School as the volleyball coach.
Great.
That's what I use my degree for.
Better than you would have if you didn't have the degree?
I didn't know what I would do if I didn't have a degree. It's just was given either work in blue collar, go into trade, whatever that I was taught from my family growing up.
So did you have a Pell Grant?
Yes, I did.
And so you get $20,000?
That's what I'm hoping
knocked
for.
down, so you go 76 to 56?
Yes.
But you still owe $56,000?
I still owe $56,000.
And what's the percentage interest rate?
Under the impression that my loans are between 3 to 5% of interest, I haven't been able to afford a single payment ever since I graduated. I've been stuck below of my income level since graduating.
So you've made no payments?
No payments. They have been forbeared and deferred ever since I graduated.
Okay, and Inez Stepman is a senior policy analyst at Independent Women's Forum and a college graduate who took out student loans to pay for college. And Inez, you say student loan forgiveness is that the whole plan is just terrible and worsens an already broken system, right?
Yeah, because it doesn't deal with the underlying problem, which, as you alluded to in the beginning of the show, is actually the cost of college and how fast that's going up. So these kinds of forgiveness plans, like the underlying student loan plans, have forced that cost up and up and up, well above inflation already for 3 decades. And that's why it's $74,000, right? That's why it's unsustainable. It is a real problem. It's a huge amount of debt. The values of these degrees are not worth the amount of debt that kids are taking out. So I understand that problem, but this actually makes it worse. And it makes it worse on the backs of people who didn't go to college, right? Who maybe made a lot of sacrifices in order to not have that amount of debt. And this is not a fair way to deal with this problem.
Well, let me ask the audience just in general, based on what you know, were you in favor of this loan forgiveness plan? If you were, raise your hand. Raise it high so the camera can see it. Okay, so that looks like about half, maybe. Why is it a good deal?
I'm a nurse, and I actually just completed my doctorate, so I would venture to say I owe more than anybody else in this room. Maybe not, but it's a lot. But I'm so grateful for financial aid and some for forgiveness. My son had to start out with debt as a new father and new husband, and he has a lot of anxiety behind of that. So when he heard about the Biden administration doing this, he was excited. He called me, "Mom, did you hear? Did you hear?" And I'm like, "Yes, of course I did." So
this plan makes a sucker out of me. You know, I went to an affordable state school, worked nights from a week before my freshman year started, graduated in 3 years. I'm a sucker. I should have taken a loan and hit the bars with my friends when I worked those 24-hour shifts.
What do you think? Good deal or bad deal?
I think that investing in a more educated society is a good thing. I think that things have to change at some point, so why not now? I think that it is predatory the way that these loan companies rely on putting young people into an insane amount of debt. And I think it's something that we need to change. And I'm sorry that it didn't happen in time for you, but I don't think that that's a reason to prevent it from happening.
Exactly. All right. Charlie Eaton is an economic physiologist, professor at UC Merced, and author of Bankers in the Ivory Tower. Charlie, you support this, correct?
That's right.
Why?
I think it's going to be transformative for millions of people's lives. There's 41 million borrowers who are going to have their debt reduced. And of those folks, you've got millions of people who are in negative net worth because of student debt. And when you cancel debt, it lets people do things that aren't previously possible. It lets people like James pursue careers in public service, like working at Burbank High School. It lets folks start small businesses. And it lets folks start families and save to buy homes. And so I think it's going to be transformative for a lot of people. It's going to right a wrong, because it used to be, if you go back to the 1970s, only 1 in 8 Americans had a student loan who went to college. Today, it's most folks who go to school, even a trade school. 40% of people with student debt don't have a college degree. They don't have any earnings boost, and millions of them are just not able to pay the debt down.
So they started out, but they didn't get to the degree. Now, many Americans want to know exactly who is paying this loan forgiveness plan. I probably should have flashed a warning up on the screen. Parents, we're getting ready to say something you don't want kids to hear. And later,
University spend millions of dollars to market you to take out those loans. Right? So in any other context, we would call this predatory lending.
I just checked my student loans because I needed to get the information to someone, and I started with $80,000. I have been paying for 10 years, and I still owe $76,000. How the is this possible? What? I think I might be late to the game learning about this. Student loans are really messed up. What are you supposed to do with it?
Wow. Now, Holly, you're an attorney, right?
Yep.
You racked up $120,000, and you say you don't think it was worth it.
I personally do not think it's worth it. I've lived a lot of life. I know more now than I did then. I don't advise anyone to go to school, especially law school, at this particular point in time, unless they fit a very specific set of criteria.
I probably should have flashed a warning up on the screen. Parents, we're getting ready to say something you don't want kids to hear when you're saying don't go to college. But no, I understand what you're saying. And it isn't for everybody. And there are people that chose not to go to college because it wasn't for them. It wasn't a good fit. And they feel like they're having to pay now. A question for all of you right quick. Whether you're in favor of it or not, if you think that you as a taxpayer are going to wind up paying for this loan forgiveness program, raise your hand. As a taxpayer, you think you're going to wind up paying for it. Okay. Most of you didn't raise your hand. So I'm curious, if you think you're not going to pay for it, where is it going to come from? Because that's got to be paid.
It's got to be paid. However, I think people are failing to recognize the fact that the $1.75 trillion is like investing in the future. We have trillions of dollars that have been forgiven in business loans. I know during COVID, many small businesses got their, I don't even know what kind of small business loan it was called, but that was almost on the same scale. So I think that this deficit
Yeah.
is something that if we don't end up paying for it and it just gets canceled, forgiven, I think it's just good news. It's gone.
Well, here's a clip where Vice President Harris was asked who was footing the bill for Biden's student loan relief plan.
Who specifically is footing the bill for student loan forgiveness? We haven't gotten a concrete answer from the administration yet.
Well, let's start with this. First of all, a lot of the same people who are criticizing what we rightly did in following through on a commitment that we made to forgive student loan debt are the same people who voted for a tax cut for the richest Americans. So when we look at who is benefiting from this, 90% of the people who are going to benefit from student loan forgiveness make under $75,000 a year. And that debt has been the reason that they're unable to start a family, buy a home, and pursue their piece of the American dream.
Did she say who's?
Dr. Phil, can I add something here?
If you're going to add to answer in that question.
So there will be a small increase to the deficit, but we should put it in perspective. It's about $6 billion annually in student loan payments that won't be collected. We have a $30 trillion economy. People are not going to feel a $6 billion increase in the deficit. And if we decide we need to pay that deficit off in the future, then that's a choice we make about how we're going to pay that with taxes. Folks like myself think we should have more tax justice and make people who are doing better pay more in taxes while maintaining a fair tax code for people in the middle. But student debt is really a tax mostly on middle and lower income folks. And so this is about fairness and doing what we did for a previous generation for today's generation.
Now, Neil McCluskey is the director at the Cato Institute's Center for Educational Freedom and holds a PhD in public policy and is the author of Unprofitable Schooling.
We really do need perspective on this. Now, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. The administration didn't give any estimates, in part because they probably don't know, and in part because they may not want people thinking about $500 billion. But when the government has a huge debt, and it then says, don't repay us $500 billion, that is money that eventually someone has to pay for. And it's also worth noting that the income taxes are predominantly paid already by the wealthiest people. So I don't know that we have a tax fairness problem in that the wealthy aren't paying enough. And it's crucial to remember that people who go to college end up making a lot more money on average over their lifetime than people who don't. So giving them money is very poorly targeted at the people who need it most.
Can I add something to that? The people who are going to college are disproportionately actually coming from the top half of the income spectrum already. So this is kind of a reverse Robin Hood kind of policy. If we were to cancel every dollar of student loan debt tomorrow, the top quintile, top 20% of earners in America would get $7 in cancellation. For the bottom quintiles, $1 in cancellation. So I know it sounds counterintuitive to say, like, well, if you're rich, why don't you just pay off the loans? It's true that if you're like in the 1%, you're going in cash, right? You're paying in cash for the university. But actually, the people who are getting degrees in the first place tend to come from the upper middle class, and that's why they and their children are disproportionately benefiting from that.
The critics say Biden's plan will raise inflation. How much? We really don't know. So what's the truth versus the spin here?
Canceling student debt is going to make that possible for a lot of people that it wasn't previously possible for.
Housing policy had a lot more to do with that than student debt.
The economy's looking good. So far, we're hanging in, and I feel good about it. But we have a long way to go.
Do you consider it a success if only 75% of people take advantage of your student loan program?
I'll consider it a success if only 10% take advantage of it. Look, people need help. This is not going to cause inflation, number one. Number two, it will generate economic growth.
What Biden is doing, it's going to cause more inflation. It's going to fuel inflation. This is not good policy.
Neil, why do you say Biden's student relief plan is bad for inflation?
Well, it's certainly going to put more money into the economy. I don't actually think it's going to be a huge amount. So if people are under the impression that $500 billion, which is the estimate of the cost of this, will all of a sudden be put into the economy. That's not what's going to happen. What you're going to see is that people will have that monthly payment they were going to send to the government that they may now spend on things in the economy. That'll probably have some impact on inflation, make it a little worse. There's some estimates. You know, for an average family, it'll be $100 or $200 more over a year that it'll cost them to pay for things. I think the much bigger danger is that it'll continue to fuel this tuition skyrocket that we see in colleges, where they say, oh, all bets are off, borrow whatever you want, it'll be forgiven.
Mark, you wanted to make a comment. What was it?
Well, I wanted to say that if anybody's going to be paying higher taxes, it is the college graduates who receive the loan forgiveness, because someone who has a bachelor's degree pays more than twice the federal income tax of someone with just a high school diploma. So they're getting the benefit, but they're going to pay for it.
Now, this is not just Mark's opinion. He does study on some of these things. He is the author of 5 best-selling books, including How to Appeal for More College Financial Aid. So you kind of know this system from the inside out, right?
Yes.
If you compare a 40-year-old today, a 40-year-old millennial like myself, I'm 41, to a 40-year-old in 1989, we have about half as much wealth. And a lot of that is because, not just because student debt drags down our wealth, but it makes it harder for folks to build wealth, especially folks from Black households who have had, because of historical discrimination, a much harder time building wealth, owning homes. Canceling student debt is going to make that possible for a lot of people that it wasn't previously possible for.
Housing policy had a lot more to do with that than student debt. It's important to understand that actually it's the people with the smallest amount of debt actually who have tend to have the most trouble paying for it, because those tend to be people who went to college and didn't finish. 10 to 20,000 may make some difference, but just as it's not going to massively fuel inflation, it's also not going to massively fuel home ownership or something, because those numbers just aren't that big.
Yeah.
We don't really have a student loan problem so much as a college completion problem. Students who drop out of college are 4 times more likely to default on their student loans than students who graduate. And among bachelor degree programs, it's 95 times more likely. So we need to find a way to enable these students to graduate, because they have the debt, but not the degree that can help them repay the debt.
Yeah, and at that point, they're like, screw it. I didn't get the degree, and you ain't going to get the money.
There should be some responsibility on universities going forward. Because universities, for example, are nonprofit, that they are good actors. I mean, Yale is a nonprofit. It's also basically a hedge fund with a university attached to it.
Exactly.
So I don't like this concept that universities are not, bad actors in all of this. I think they have enormous responsibility here. And frankly, the deal they kind of cut with all of us in society was, we're going to produce more educated people and the GDP is going to go up. Well, a lot of what they're doing in the universities today isn't producing more educated people. And increasingly Americans are looking at that and saying, why am I and I did go to college, but somebody who didn't go to college, why am I going to pay not only for this debt forgiveness, but for this whole system? They spend millions of dollars to market university and to market you to take out those loans.
Yeah.
Right? So in any other context, we would call this predatory lending.
Yeah.
But it's because it's universities and they're nonprofits and they're good for society, we look the other way to the fact that they're enormously financially benefiting from this.
There's a common belief that this plan will benefit the well-off. Is that true? I'm really curious about what this audience thinks, and I'm going to ask that when we come back as well.
They're the ones who are going to repay the debt. Yeah, if you're going to rob banks, that's where the money is.
Right. If you're going to rob banks, rob a big one.
I'm pretty psyched about the loan forgiveness program. I graduated from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Was it worth the $60,000 in debt that I have now? No. And had I known that, this is how it would end up, I wouldn't have gone.
It's not life-changing and it's not world-changing, but I'll take it. I'll certainly take what I can get. I plan to be over $100,000 in debt when I graduate.
Currently, I owe $135,000, but my goal is to have everything paid off by April of 2026. I'll be 33 years old. I feel as though I'll be putting my life on hold.
Jonas Gindin, he's not going to college, and the price was part of his decision.
I chose to move out here to do acting, and I don't want to pay student loans for the rest of my life. I know a lot of people that still are in my family, and that's not something I want to do.
Well, we're back talking about the controversy sweeping the nation over the Biden administration's student loan relief plan. You had something you wanted to say. We got to get a mic to you here. Okay, go ahead.
I have a question because you said that it will be paid back in tax dollars over time because the graduates make more money. Well, aren't they going to pay that money in taxes whether they have this forgiveness or not? And I'm coming at it from I have a lot of student debt. I went back to school later in life, but I'm not necessarily for this program.
Well, when they forgive $350 billion of debt, that means that the federal budget doesn't have the payments on those loans, the interest and the payments on principal, which means there's going to be a hole in subsequent budgets that either manifests as a budget deficit or they'll have to increase taxes to compensate. The taxes are borne disproportionately by higher income individuals, so they're the ones who are going to repay the debt. Yeah, if you're going to rob banks, that's where the money is.
Right. If you're going to rob banks, rob a big one.
Can I introduce another beneficiary here besides higher income people? The universities themselves, right? They're not stuck with these debts. They got their money up front.
Right.
And I really think one of the biggest problems with this plan is it puts no responsibility on the universities going forward. It makes their product, it allows them to keep charging more and more and more money. And that's why we're all in this mess. But this actually makes that worse. It puts no responsibility on them to actually make sure that the degree that they're granting is something that's worth the price, where people can pay off their loans because they're reasonable and the job that they get after getting a degree is actually somewhat, in balance with what they paid for it.
Okay, go ahead. Back here in the back row.
Coming from a younger perspective, more people around my age, I'm 20, more people around my age find college to not be relevant anymore. People are starting to find you can get everything you need in a college degree online. People are posting lessons online, college professors for free.
Did you go to college?
I did. I dropped out first semester. I went to college for acting. So I didn't find it necessary to have a degree. And I clocked in at $9,860 in debt. And I got really lucky, and I'm pushing to have it relieved.
Where's Kelly? Kelly?
Hi.
What's your thought about this?
I like the idea that everyone should be allowed a free education. At the same time, I did, when I went to college, work 2 jobs. I just felt like it was my responsibility. I signed the loan papers, and I had to pay it.
Who else has a comment? Yes, ma'am.
Thinking of all that $100,000 in debt just seems absolutely something that I definitely wouldn't want to sign up for. Just thinking about it gives me anxiety.
You didn't even like saying $100,000.
No, I didn't even want to say it.
She couldn't even get that out of her mouth. Is the student debt system the biggest scam ever that warrants a criminal investigation? That's how many Americans are feeling, so we'll talk about that next.
If even $1 of my taxes that I have worked hard for to pay, if $1 is going to go to help them pay for the $10,000, well, I would like that dollar that I contributed to go towards something that's going to benefit me as a taxpayer. It's not necessarily a fair thing.
Education is a ticket to a better life. But over time, that ticket has become too expensive for too many Americans.
Dara borrowed $40,000 to get her degree. She's been making payments since she graduated in 2016. But with all that interest, she's barely made a dent.
I think it is predatory of colleges and schools to go after kids who may not have ever had any understanding of how finances work.
Our work must continue to address the student debt crisis and college affordability to make sure that every single American has the opportunity to live into their brilliance.
Many Americans are now wondering if the entire student loan system, including federal and private school loans, is a scam that will eventually ruin the economy. I have a graphic about what Americans think. 36.1 strongly support this plan, 16.6% somewhat support it, 9.8 somewhat oppose it, and 29.9 strongly oppose it, 7.6 just aren't sure. So you can see it's kind of split. So people were asked what their opposition levels would be based on potential scenarios. And these are hypotheticals. 64% say they would oppose this if it did increase their taxes, if they had to pay for this tax-wise. 68% would oppose it if it benefited the rich. 76% would oppose it if it raised tuition. And 71% would oppose it if it resulted in credential inflation, meaning that if, because of this, more people did get degrees, so you had to have better credentials to get the jobs that they're now competing for. So they don't want to pay taxes, and they don't want the rich to benefit. Now, I want to hear from the audience. What do you guys think about this? Yes, ma'am, right here.
Sorry, I don't have any fancy words like all these guys around me. I'm just a mom, and I'm here with my daughter, and I'm the kind of parent that throughout my life, I try to save some money for her to go to some advanced education. I didn't know if it was college at the time or what it was going to be. So I made sure I put a little bit of money aside. So we sat down and made a smart decision, or talked about, student debt and all that. And we made a decision that based on what we had saved was something that was going to advance her life in some way. So I don't know. I feel like you're assuming that just because you have a bachelor's degree or college degree that you're going to be super successful. And $10,000 really for these guys is they're still going to have so much debt that they're going to pay forever. So you cannot assume that they're going to start making a lot more money. And as a taxpayer, for me, let's say I pay $100 in taxes, just to put it like that. Well, if even $1 of my taxes that I have worked hard for to pay, if $1 is going to go to help them pay for the $10,000, well, I would like that dollar that I contributed to go towards something that's going to benefit me as a taxpayer. So even though I'm helping them in some way, I feel like it's not necessarily a fair thing.
Part of the problem is this system's too complicated. You need a PhD to understand our student loan system. And so I think one thing that maybe we all agree on moving forward is we need to provide more debt-free paths for folks to go to college, because no one should have to have a lifetime of debt just because they tried to go and get an education and contribute to our society.
Or we rethink the assumption that the only successful path to the good life is college, because that is the way that we've been talking about it. Somebody was saying your parents said, this is the way to the good life. And I don't look at this as an individual sort of responsibility or irresponsibility problem. I don't think that 18-year-olds are any more irresponsible today than they were 30 years ago. The difference is the entire system has pushed the cost of college so wildly up that it has made these choices really, really difficult for everyone. And I think we need to rethink, especially given the fact that trust in universities is, I think, rightfully dropping. Literacy of college grads is dropping. What are we actually getting for this huge, subsidized pathway that we say is the only way to success?
Well, and as you know, there's a lot of research that says the correlation is between intelligence and success, not education and success. But then we do see the stats that say you make more, generally speaking, if you have a degree versus if you don't, because it is rewarded in industry when you go for a job.
It is, but that's also partially a policy decision. It's partially the natural market, but it's also partially the fact that the federal government has been in this business for the last 30 years, making this choice the preferred choice in every single one of our policy decisions. And now we're seeing that maybe it wasn't as fantastic an idea. Obama was saying he wanted to send 100% of people to college. We're seeing that's not the greatest idea.
All right, we have to take a break. I'm going to tell you what I think when we come back. You're not ever going to come up with a plan or a program that makes everybody happy all the time. You could say, okay, there, Dr. Phil, we'll let you decide. No, thank you. I don't have the wisdom to come up with this, but I do have an opinion, and the opinion is that college costs too much money. Now, I went to college a long, long time ago, and I got a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD, and a postdoctoral fellowship. and I think it was $15 an hour or something, seriously. And now it's just absurdly expensive, where people are having to go $100,000 in debt to get through a 4-year degree that then, if they can get a job, pays them really low money. And in the social sciences, which my degree is just like the lowest of all, you get like $33,000, where the average for the university is like 44 or 45. So I'd have been really out of luck. I had never been able to pay back any of that money. But somehow or another, there's got to be some control on college cost. It's not just let them keep borrowing money and paying these out-of-control college costs, and then every so often hit the reset button by forgiving the debt. The colleges are paid. They don't care. We just simply are going at this the wrong way. You want to go to college, you should be able to go to college and not have to pay a ridiculous amount for it. If it straps the students for the rest of their lives, not their problem. You can't get a job, not their problem. The government has to come in and bail it out, not their problem. You got to have some way that they have a stake in this, and you're suffering, 10 years on.
Very much so. And can we say we know for a fact, anyone who's been to college, that those same colleges will call you and request more money
immediately after graduation.
Yeah. Final comment back here, and then we've got to go.
So I'm a college professor from the University of Laverne, and I'm here with my students. And I'm not opposed to the student debt relief, but it doesn't really solve the problem. A lot of our students are first-generation college students. We're a Hispanic-serving institution. And most of my students have jobs, like you, when you went through school. And I think that one way to reduce the impact of all that debt is to not treat college as a vacation, but to find a way to work while you're going to school in a way that makes sense. And I think the idea that school should be free, a lot of the resources that we have, I'm a film school teacher. We have a film studio that costs $2 million. We have the same cameras that they use here. We wouldn't be able to pay for that if we were not a private institution with tuition to pay for those resources. And that's why students leave a community college to go to our school, so they have those resources. So I think it's a complicated problem. We can't just start writing checks to pay for school, though I'm not against some help. Help is needed.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate everybody's thoughts on this. We've got to stop, but I do appreciate everybody's thoughts on this. And I want to thank my guests today, including Neil McCluskey, author of Unprofitable Schooling, Inez Stepman, Charlie Eaton, author of Bankers in the Ivory Tower, and Mark Kantrowitz, the author of How to Appeal for More College Financial Aid. Thank you for your comments today. Coming up, if your day is one demand and deadline after another, then you don't want to miss my great tips to avoid stress-related burnout. Next. All right, here's a question for you. Do you work long hours day after day, inundated with phone calls and emails that just never seem to end? Or maybe you're always on the go, whether it's driving your children to school and activities, grocery shopping, or running countless errands. With a hectic schedule and endless demands, it's easy to feel a sense of burnout. Now, prioritizing your mental health and incorporating some time in your busy routine to unwind is really important. Now, whether you have a few hours or just 5 minutes, take a break. It's essential to live a well-rounded life. You have to make time for activities of self-reflection. And some people like to journal or meditate. And these tasks will not only help you relax, but can shift your thinking and change the way you feel about the stresses in your life. You can take up a hobby that you would enjoy, like maybe cooking or painting or gardening. Find something that you're passionate about that can also help you feel inspired. Life without passion, just going through the motions, is terrible. Getting outside and staying active is crucial for your mental health. Something as simple as taking a walk can help you think more positively or improve your overall well-being. Socializing is also a great way to avoid burnout. Getting together with friends and family allows you to escape reality and have some well-deserved fun. That's especially important after this quarantine and pandemic. And I always encourage my hardworking staff to find some time to relax whenever they can reduce burnout. Now, many of them have found a fun way to do that with the app game Bingo Blitz. We talk about it around here, so they thought, well, I'll download it and see what's up. But this isn't your typical bingo game. This isn't grandma's bingo. It has completely elevated the way people play bingo with special features, power-ups, mini games, events, and more. I mean, it's a brand new game experience. And since this game is on your cell phone, my staff enjoys playing on the go whenever they have a chance. Not while they're driving. Don't do this while you're driving. Whether they're standing by for a guest arrival headed to the stage, waiting for a taping to start, or enjoying it during their lunchtime. It's pretty obvious they enjoy playing Bingo Blitz. I've actually walked up on them playing it on the ramp and around the lot. It's a great way for them to take a break from the stress of the day and have a little fun. Every room in the game is set in a different city or country, so you can escape reality and travel around the world to places like Italy or London. It's a free-to-play social bingo game with a unique platform that makes it easy to connect with millions of people worldwide. And you'll learn about the places you travel with fun trivia questions throughout the game. You can chat with friends, share gifts, and game collectibles. And you can make new friends with people around the country or the world. With new surprises every day, you never know what to expect with this high-action game. And if you're looking for a fun way to take a break, then join the biggest bingo community in the entire world. Just go to your App Store or Google Play and download Bingo Blitz for free today. And when you do, you'll get a special welcome bonus. Make sure to tell your friends and family and play together. I mean, get on with your friends and do it all at the same time. That makes it competitive and a lot of fun. I want to thank my guests for being here today. For more information about today's episode, or if you'd like to share your story, log on to drphil.com and tell us what's happening in your life. And if you want to add your voice to the conversation, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you're in the LA area or plan to be, we'd love to have you join us up here on stage in our studio audience. The tickets are free, so just go to drphil.com and click on Be Part of the Audience for all the details. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to my podcast, Fill in the Blanks, where I provide critical information on some of the most important issues that we're facing today as individuals, families, and as a society. And also listen to Robin's podcast, I've Got a Secret. She talks to all kinds of thought leaders, innovators, people that have great success stories that got there in ways you would never think in a million years. You can check them both out on Apple Podcasts or just wherever you listen. So thank you, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Guys, thanks so much.